Hello, everyone. This is Gruesome Herzog. My very special guest today is actor, producer, director Billy Garberina. Billy, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Gru? Do you go by Gruesome or Gru?
Doesn't matter. I'm called either or.
Scott, I'm doing great.
I'm called Scott, Gruesome, Herzog. Don't call me late for supper. Whatever.
Superior. Well, in that don't be late for summer. You and I definitely have a kinship. I'm getting a little too round from the not being late for dinner too many times.
Oh, excellent. Well, actually, the reason I have you on here for is because of Necroville. That's how I came across you and your counterpart in that movie. But if you don't mind, I'd like to start a little bit earlier. I haven't interviewed Richard Griffin, but we've talked on the phone. I've interviewed a couple cast members and also talked to them. First I want to talk about is Feeding the Masses in 2004. Again,
Gotcha.
It's a Richard Griffin film, and it was written by Trent Haga. Your experiences with that movie, would you like to share to the listeners exactly, roughly what it's about and your experiences?
Feeding the Masses is kind of a biting social satire about government controlling media and kind of steering public opinion and public action based on that. So that's kind of the overall theme. It centers a trio of individuals who are on a news team. A soldier who's assigned from the military who's assigned to protect the news team out in the field. The news reporter and myself, the cameraman. Rachel Morris is the news reporter. Patrick Cohen is the soldier, and I play Torch Tenney, the centerpiece of the aggravation and kind of angst of the world of Feeding the Masses. So that said, to get to the point, it's a zombie apocalypse movie. The zombie apocalypse is in progress, and society's falling apart. And as society is falling apart, the government is taking deeper and deeper steps and sanctions to control what the public is hearing and understanding about the zombie apocalypse. It's actually far worse than is being reported. And, as the government gets, deeper and deeper control of what's going on and being broadcast, obviously the intensity of the zombie apocalypse is increasing.
Okay.
So that in a nutshell is kind of the stage for Feeding the Masses.
Well, I can tell you one thing about Richard Griffin. He has a knack of movie making. I've come across a lot of reviewers, a lot of people that, you have to desire Richard Griffin's films. And I'm a big fan of his because I love the splatter disco that he did. I just love his way of making a movie. I think he's a very original. You know what I mean?
No, and Richard, and it's interesting because Richard Griffin as a director and then Ted Marr as his producer, they're an unstoppable combo. They've got energy and talent. They're very, very good natural politicians. They know how to, they know the whole dance. They know how to put everything together. They know how to get everybody in alignment, and more importantly than that, they know how to cope with crisis situations. Actors going nuts and walking, or a location falling apart at the last minute, and they can pick up the pieces and move along without a beat. I met Richard in 2003 on the set of Stink Flesh. He was the director of photography. Plays a small walk-on role, and I was just immediately impressed. And I was very, very grateful. He had actually traveled back to New Mexico to kind of check on what was going on with the cut, and he invited me out to Rhode Island. It was actually shot in Pawtucket, Rhode Island.
Oh, wow.
To be in Feeding the Masses. And interestingly enough, he originally wanted me to be the soldier character, but I read the script and I was like, oh my God, I really, really am connecting with this character, and I kind of got on the phone with him. I pitched it to him, and he said, let's do it. And so I ended up being Torch. But yeah, Richard and Ted, great filmmakers. They've got a huge body of work. And one thing about Richard, I've always been particularly impressed with his lighting. He really has a real kind of a love for old Argento kind of mood.
Yeah.
colored gel, background lighting. It's really, really, really fun stuff. The camera work he puts together, the cast he puts together, all good stuff.
Yep.
All good stuff.
Yeah. The next one we talked about briefly off the air a couple of days ago, but I'm very interested in it because it has the word slashers in it. I'm a big slasher fan. I could be wrong on the storyline of the movie, but it's called Wedding Slashers in 2006. That's a Carlos Scott film, and you mentioned the writer is Scott Phillips.
Well, actually, the writer, I believe, was Robert Medrano.
Okay.
And see, there's an interesting story there. The movie was financed by a guy out of LA, and what happened in the end, it was such a debacle that the executive producer and the director and the producer, me, all took our names off it. And essentially, the executive producer and the director took their names off of it. And then I said, yeah, I'm not going to be left holding the bag. Take my name off of it too. But I'm in it as one of the leads.
Yeah.
I also ended up credited as the second unit director. And years later, I'm like, you know what, I did it. If you look up William Renardo on the IMDb, you'll see that that's William Renardo. Who I don't know how they came up with the name William Renardo, but that's the singular credited producer for that. So you see him credited nowhere else. So that was me.
Okay.
And I don't know why years later I was just like, you know what, I did that. I'll own it.
Right.
But the whole thing was kind of an interesting thing because we were experimenting. Some guys that I work with in Albuquerque, we were experimenting with what it would be like to take financing from an out-of-state source, and it ended up being this war between what we could do for no money and what was being demanded for no money. And then, then the budget got cut, what we were promised, and then therefore promising people to be paid to participate was being cut. So it was just a nightmare from beginning to end. Trying to get it together. It ended up being finished, and ended up getting out there. And because of the title being so familiar, being so similar to the Wedding Crashers, it actually ended up being a very widely released and widely seen movie, which is kind of sad because, in my opinion, what had been done up to that point, stinker flesh or feeding the masses. And then there were other things in post and in development then. But at that point, it was kind of a little bit disheartening because for the great efforts that those movies were, Wedding Flashers was, quote unquote, the one they were going to remember us for because it was so widely seen. So it's not a terrible movie. It's campy and kind of goofy, but it's a little bit disjointed. And
see,
Robert Medrano wrote the script, and to get to that, he wrote the script as per the specifications of the executive producer. But it had car explosions and all this crazy nonsense in it. It's like, you can't do this in 2 weeks on a $10,000. Are you out of your damn mind? So the script was continually being reworked and rewritten on the set and on the fly. It was just kind of it was a very, very bizarre journey to get through that movie.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, the next movie I fell in love with. Now, you mentioned about the kooky, campy, goofy horror comedy. I love that shit. And I don't know what it is, but anything that I find, it's cheerleaders or I just love that crap. When I say crap, I don't mean it as in crap. I mean crap as in crap that I like. I got to be careful how I say that. But I love that goofy comedy horror. It has, speaking of that, this is definitely not goofy. I actually love it. Necroville in 2007. This is the movie.
Absolutely.
This is the movie how I even found out, no offense, who you were. Because, a lot of movies, like you said, are made that are not available yet. So, obviously, if you can't see it, you got to do research. And then I found you. Now, Richard Griffin was a co-director, like you said, and your partner, writer, Adam Jerem Brown. Now, I want to tell you something. Used to, in this movie, I think, to me, was one of the best two tag teams in a horror comedy that I've seen in a long time. you have that chemistry in a movie. You know, me going through my job search, and it's hard to find a job in society today, the way the government is and all that. But then to see you guys getting jobs, losing them, and then you guys find a job in this movie. So I'll go ahead and let you explain what I mean by that. It has zombies, vampires, werewolves, and a evil, horrible girlfriend. So go ahead.
Necrophil is a really, really, really interesting piece. That was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to get through, production-wise and post-production-wise, and even pre-production. It was just a monster. But it basically came from, many, 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 many years ago. Adam Brown and I worked in a movie theater in Albuquerque, the Lobo Theater, and we used to speculate how funny it would be if two kind of bumbling idiot characters were being pursued relentlessly by a vampire. And, if in their attempt to, dissuade said vampire from chasing them, they drop a piano on him.
Yeah.
With the logic being that even if it has the strength of 10 men, that will take the pepper out of it. And, of course, they're incorrect because there is no precedent anywhere in the literature for, a vampire being dispatched that way. So, and we would joke and we, think of different scenes and different little scenarios that might be fun. But ultimately, in the end, that's what we came up with, and that was the kind of the seed kind of concept around which we wanted to build this movie. And from there, it was kind of like, kind of a simple thing to just create the world of Necroville, which is a world in which, rather than the world falling apart or being created, it just happens to be a world where supernatural creatures and circumstances are happening. And, when you have that going on, you just kind of accept that for a matter of course. And then, what is society like? I'm kind of not describing it well, but the idea is essentially like, what if society isn't falling apart because they're zombies? What if they're just zombies?
Yeah.
And kind of, as all, in my opinion, great zombie movies, and hopefully Necroville in time will be vindicated as one of them. There's a point to the zombies, which is, there's a point, not a point. Ultimately, to me, in a zombie movie, the zombies are just an ancillary environmental hazard. It's like the fire in Towering Inferno or the water in Titanic. It's going on.
Right.
But what's interesting is that creates a crucible in which the characters interact. And so, traditionally in a zombie movie, you've got, the zombies going on and all hell's breaking loose, but what you ultimately have is some sort of a character drama. Like, it goes all the way back to Night of the Living Dead. You got this thing going on. It's an ancillary environmental hazard, and what does it ultimately mean? Well, what are these characters doing that normally wouldn't interact with each other, and they're forced into the situation? The concept then behind Necroville is, as the zombies and the werewolves and the monsters all kind of being a concept, my vocabulary is failing me today, but it's an allegory. There you go, for society. And as I was experiencing society at the time, and still do, it's filled with these glaringly horrible things that people just kind of walk down the street and ignore.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing about Necroville is these are very dangerous and very awful times and very dangerous and awful things walking down the street. But many people either turn a blind eye or don't care or don't consider it to be much of a nuisance, despite the very dangerous and obvious nature of it. So that's a little bit about kind of the driving force of what is Necroville about.
Yeah, I loved it. You had the werewolves are funny. I mean, the whole story. I reviewed it, as you know, and I got a great response to it. A lot of people checked it out. So hopefully, like you said, that's one of those hidden gems to me that sooner or later, in a matter of time, it will get out there. And I know a lot of people who will check it out will definitely enjoy it.
Well, and we give the Necroville guarantee, which still stands up, which is, I guarantee the audience that when they watch Necroville, they will see a vampire die in a way they've never seen before die in the history of cinema. And, I have screened Necroville in front of literally thousands of people and many, many, many more on the internet, through streaming or Netflix or rentals or purchases. And, the simple fact of the matter is not a single person has been able to refute that claim. You will see a vampire die in a very unusual and horrible way.
That's for sure. The next film that I haven't seen, but I'm anxious to get a chance to watch it, it's called Wickedwood in 2009.
Wickedwood was a really, really kind of interesting movie. It was the second time that I was working with Chris Ruffy and the Wisconsin team. Chris Ruffy is actually a North Carolina local, but he kind of found the Autumn Night Studios guys, Hank Carlson and Vince Nardi and Matt Vasson, and they kind of found each other and brought Chris out, and they loved me in Psycho Holocaust, and interestingly enough, kind of as both actor and technician, and we had such a good time. Chris had this other script, and I loved it, and he put me and Vanell, as the kind of the two leads of the movie, and we just kind of knocked it out of the park. Nobody does. I find myself saying this a lot when I'm talking scripts to people, but in my opinion, nobody does marital discord like Chris Ruffy. That dude, and speaking from the perspective of somebody who's been married and divorced, and been through my fair share of relational disharmony. Chris Ruffy really, 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 really does a really fair and really balanced look at the male-female marital relationship. It's really, really awesome, and so I always love chewing Chris' scripts, and I always love chewing the scenery on his sets, and always good time. And of course, Hank as a special effects artist, and Vinny as a camera op GP. Although he was a little bit ill then, and I think he was only kind of operating in an ancillary fashion for Wickedwood. I can't say enough good things about the Autumn Night team and Chris and all those guys. And the cast was great. That was my first time I got to meet Samantha Novak. Got to work with Vanell again. Just awesome all around.
Now, is that available for DVD?
It's still in post, oddly enough. I think we shot that in, I want to say October or November of 2008.
Oh wow.
And sometimes these things take forever. I'll give you, for instance, you mentioned Necroville at 2007. We actually shot that April 2005.
Oh wow.
So it took like 2.5 years to post, and then like another 6 months to get released on DVD. Psycho Holocaust is a similar affair. It was shot in, I want to say, October-ish, maybe September-ish of 2007. And so now here we are, 2011, about, what was it, 2008? It was 2007 or 2008, but the point is that, several years later, it's just now coming together. So, there's some things, some inserts and some questions about the direction of inserts and the cut of the movie and certain things in post. One of the things I think Wickedwood suffered from was there was all the footage got captured in a funny way, and so it needed to be recaptured and redone from scratch. It's one of those things where I've come to develop a phrase about filmmaking. And, I hope you'll pardon my French, but,
yeah,
it never fucking ends.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So there's always some new dread bullshit, that comes out to bite you. And, Wickedwood, I've seen cuts of the movie, It's an outstanding movie. It's fun. It's fresh. It's living. It's a great piece. And I have every faith that, based on the footage, it will eventually come together and be put out in a way that's acceptable to everybody. But, it's just a matter of time. It's more of a matter of when than if. And when it does come out, it's going to be another good addition to the body of existing work.
Yeah, you mentioned Psycho-Holocaust, so we can move on. But one thing I will say, it has an actress in there that I think is an up-and-coming superstar to me. It's Rainey Brown.
Rain Brown is a dear, dear friend of mine. I met Rain on the set of Psycho-Holocaust. We became fast friends. We've done at least 4 features. If I'm remembering, like 4 features since. She lives very close by with good pals. There's not enough time in one interview for me to tell you good things about Rain.
Well, I loved her in 100 Tears.
Oh yeah. Well, no, see, Rain is one of those, rare actresses who. I'm going to get in so much trouble when I say this. Rain is one of those rare actresses that should be doing this. I know how that sounds. That sounds terrible, but Rain has those gigantic blue eyes. And she can just do all kinds of things from be pretty to flirt to be frightened, and they're very engaging. She looks great on camera. She's a monstrously talented actress. She's awesome. She's dull to work with. But it's funny because she and I have a friendship. She and I can get kibitz a little bit. We have a very kind of bickering sibling kind of relationship. But there's a lot of love and a lot of respect there. Yeah. Again, I can't say enough good things about Rain.
Now, I did have a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Chris Seaver a while ago.
Chris Seaver.
And we had an interview lined up, but it didn't seem to quite catch up yet. But which I will catch up to him. But there's a movie that I have here.
Chris Seaver was just in my house this week.
He's a fun guy to talk to, let me tell you, and he's another filmmaker that I have the utmost respect for, because I like these directors who, pardon my French, I say it, there's quite a few of them, and I think they're the best people on the earth. They don't give a flying fuck what people think. They do what they love to do. Make a movie, no matter if it's 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. They just want to make a movie, and they make it funny, and they just do it. And that's Chris Seaver and Terror at Blood Fart Lake in 2009. I do have this movie. I haven't watched it yet, which I'm going to be watching it very soon. But your experiences with Chris Seaver, now I know you say he's at your house, but give an idea roughly of Chris Seaver's mind of the way he makes movies.
All right, this is going to sound really weird, but the whole Chris Seaver thing requires a bit of a background. When I first was exposed to Chris Seaver movies, I thought, what is this garbage? What is this? This is schlocky, campy. These people aren't even trying. They're just kind of going nuts and weeding out. That was my first 5 or 10 minutes. But because I don't like to dismiss things out of hand, and I like to, get the full experience, so then I can talk about it. After about 8 to 10 minutes watching, I was like, wow, there's something going on here. This particular brand of camp and these, lines and this camera work, there's something very deliberate going on. And it was when I got to that point at about my 8 to 10 minutes, it was one of his early shot on VHS Bone Jack High movies. I can't even remember the title because Chris has made
I know
40 or 50 projects.
I know.
The dude's prolific. And it was as I started to really listen to the words and really kind of look at the style and really kind of start to sink my teeth in what he was doing that I actually kind of became really kind of excited about what he was doing. And then I found out that he makes these movies in 3 days. And I was like, oh my God, so 3 days. Like, what the hell is that? So when I was going to my first Chris Seaver movie, which was Wet Heat in 2007 or 8, I remember thinking I was preparing myself psychologically for war, because I imagined people would be screaming and barking at each other and going, now, light, move. So I expected like people would be throwing lights across the room at each other, and like catching the lights and plugging them in the wall, just like run and gun and hustle. And what I discovered is it was exactly the opposite of those expectations. Everybody, including Chris, is just totally chill and relaxed, and it was just all very easy, and Chris doesn't take a lot of time with lights, and he doesn't take a lot of time with camera, but what he has are two things. He has his words, and he has his characters.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to sound really weird, and I don't fully understand it. I mean, as my friendship with Chris grows over the years, and as my understanding of his style and his projects grows over the years, and by the way, Chris would never. I don't even know if Chris thinks this way about these things, which is part of the sublime beauty of Chris Seaver. But speaking from the perspective of an actor, there is something really special about the script that he writes. It's really weird. It's like he's a savant or something. He's got this it's like this nigh Shakespearean command of the English language and word creation and of word usage and of word implementation. It's really hard to pin down. There's I don't fully understand it. I'm a very chatty person. I'm at a loss for how to describe it. There's something very different and very special going on with the LBP thing and the LBP style, and especially Chris Seaver. And it's too easy to take those first 8 or 10 minutes and dismiss them out of hand. But if you really start to watch the movies and listen to the words and listen and watch the characters and watch the interaction, there's really something insane and sublime and crazy and wondrous going on all at once.
Right.
On these movies that are like shot in 3 days with low technical expectations and on a $300 budget. It's wild.
Yeah. Same goes for Taint Light.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on. It was. I mean, I don't even know how to explain this, but Taint Light was written up in the Washington Post as one of the top 25 all-time downloaded movies on Netflix, and simultaneously derided as one of the worst.
He has one hell of a following.
He does.
It's
They're
amazing.
rabid.
A lot of people who are getting in the movie business that don't want to take it so serious starting off, he'd be a good example to study if they want to get into business and not take it serious right off the bat. He's a prime example of what you can do when you have an open mind, a talented writing skills, and don't give a shit.
And a dedicated, crew to I mean, he keeps the same actors around for years. And it really has to do more with who's available. There's a concept of availability where actors are concerned. But he keeps calling people back. What are you doing? You want to come do this movie? You want to come do this movie? You want to come do this movie? And he's relentless.
Right.
There's something, I would just ask anybody who checks out 1 or 10 or 20 of Chris Seaver's movies not to dismiss them out of hand. Really do your best to try to pay attention to what's going on with the words and what's going on with the characters.
Yep.
Because there's a sublime kind of comedy there that's both subtle and gross, and both overt and layered.
Right.
And it's really, really, really easy to just dismiss it out of hand. And I would just caution for anybody who wants to try out a very different flavor of cinema.
Well,
take the time and explore it.
I'll say it, and I'll say it again, and I don't care if I offend other horror reviewers or whatever. A true horror fan should be able to watch anything with an open mind. That means how much it costs to make a movie. First and foremost, when you review a movie, you always got to look at the expense that they had available to make before you make these harsh judgments. That's my philosophy in my reviews, and I'll stick with it.
Well, and I think there's definitely something there, because I mean, I don't know, it's tough. When you've got the mainstream, the quote unquote mainstream, and you've got mainstream television and mainstream cinema and a mainstream audience, people often aren't even exposed to things of this lower budget nature, and they're definitely excuse me, belch there on the and there's definitely I mean, far be it for me to ever tell anybody what they ought to think or what they ought to look at, but in my opinion, looking at the wide variety of film as a genre, that happens worldwide on many different cameras through many different lenses of camera and of eye of director. I think you have to, take certain things into account when you're looking at any piece, and really kind of look at different things like, well, who is making this? What are they saying? And what are the ingredients that they're working with? There's somebody once said, I don't know who it was. I think it might be Roger Corman or somebody might have once said, it's a miracle that any movie ever gets finished, and it really is true. And that a DVD or a VHS tape or whatever is making its way to somebody somewhere, and they're watching it at all, is amazing. Yep. And I mean, I'm not trying to be an apologist for the deluge of shitty movies that are out there in the universe, but I think it's important to look at things through the lens of, what am I looking at? What is the value here, and what is not valuable, and what can I get out of this experience as an audience member?
Right.
On the other hand, you shouldn't demand that the audience have to work too hard.
Right.
Because they're there to be entertained. They're not there to work. They're there to have fun.
Yep.
We'll be engaged. So I don't know. It's a tough line to cross.
Right.
It's a tough line. It's a tough balancing act, tripwire to walk on.
Well, I'm more than just a horror fan. I'm a sci-fi fan. And I'm also, believe it or not, a Western fan. Now I'm not. I can remember. I watch a lot of the '70s Clint Eastwood. Other than the older stuff, I know in the '80s I watched a Western called Pale Rider, Clint Eastwood. That's more of a tamer Western for him, if I remember correctly. But I like it. A Western is good if it has the right personalities, if you know what I mean. I picture Jack Palance on a horse, or Robert Stack. But you're in a film in 2010, which whenever it comes available to watch, I will definitely check it out. It's called The Righteous and the Wicked in 2010. It's a Craig A. Butler film. Do you want to give your experiences? Not experiences, basically what it's about.
Well, it's I got to give a lot of credit to my buddy Craig. Craig and I've been collaborating for several years now. He was actually the director of photography on another movie that I've got coming out. It's called Stick. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of really wanted to break out of the making a horror movie kind of jag. And he said, I want to make a Western. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what kind of a market there is for that low-budget Western. I don't know. What are you doing, man? Do what you want to make, but I don't know, man. And, God bless him. He forged through. He got it done. And blew my mind. Shot it in 16 days. Did it on a nominal budget. And, it is a Western. I don't know any other way to describe it. There's cowboys and horses and gunfights and, gritty, manly shenanigans. The basic, the basic premise of it is an aging gunslinger is trying to arrange one last big heist so that he can retire. and kind of finally put his sins of his past behind him. And so, for all intents and purposes, it's a heist movie.
Right.
But, unfortunately, one of those ghosts from his past comes back to kind of settle the score for those indiscretions and whatnot from his youth. So it's a very interesting movie. We shot it in, I want to say, the summer of 2009, and it got picked up by a pretty good distributor. It's a label called Grindstone. The deliverables were just mailed off this month. So, the contract's signed, it's coming out.
Good deal.
It's all very, very cool. And I was the director of photography. I was a lead in the ensemble. And I also was the second unit director. So I'm very, very, very proud of Craig for doing this audacious thing, getting it done, much less getting it released. And I'm very proud of my work in it, and just have nothing but good things to say about the cast and crew of that movie. I definitely, if there's any fans of Western out there, we definitely kind of modeled this on a very spaghetti Western, kind of long, drawn-out shots and tension-building kind of thing. The score by Paul Amos is just top-notch. It's just an all-around really fun thing, and it's a very, very, very wild departure from what I was used to doing, working on horror movies and horror comedy. So I'm very excited about that. So keep an eye out for The Righteous and the Wicked.
I will definitely check it out when it comes available. The next one you mentioned about a couple seconds ago, called Stiffed, in 2010, directed by the man, Billy Garberina.
Stiffed, Stiffed is, interestingly enough, also about bank robbers, but in this case, they're bank robbing zombies.
Damn.
It's really funny. And that movie actually is finally finished. We shot it in October 2008. And I don't know how the IMDb works, because the time when you shoot a movie and the time you get it on the IMDb and the time you get it released are three different things often. But Stiffed is finally released. Stiffed is finally finished. And we have several offers on the table for distribution, and we're getting ready to go with one of those deals. So I'm at liberty to say that much. But as for Stiffed itself, writer Devin O'Leary, who's been kind of a staple of many of the movies we've made, going all the way back to Stink of Flesh. He plays the other soldier, the third soldier of this Volvita, whatever my character's and whatever his character.
Right.
It was 10 years ago, man. I can't remember. But Devin appears as half a dozen little roles in Necroville, and he makes appearances in Jimmy Skelter, and I can't remember if he was in the writing session. But the point is, he's always been he himself is a writer, and a very talented one at that. And Stiff came about because he was lecturing in a South New Mexico university setting on screenwriting, and he's been a movie reviewer and critic for a local paper in Albuquerque for many, many, many moons. And he was talking about when you write a script, basically everything that you could think of has been done under the sun. And the real trick is to find something new. But not new. But what he meant is, try to find a new way of presenting old material. And one of the students in the class said, well, what do you mean? And he just kind of off the top of his face, like zombie bank robbers. You have zombie movies and you have bank robber movies, but nobody's done zombie bank robbers. So, what would you do with zombie bank robbers? And so, he came back from that, and we were having our weekly video game session. Because, for all of the fancy parlance of, yes, script and pre-production and development, basically it amounts to two idiots sitting around in around a living room with ferrets running around. playing Lego Batman,
Right.
and he comes to me, and I'm, trying to get him to, join in the second player for the next level. And he's like, well, what about this idea? And I was like, oh, it's an interesting idea, but, whatever, okay. So, like 10 days later, he throws like 27 pages of script in front of me. I said, what's this? He's like, read it. I started reading it. I was like, I thought this was a goofy idea you had. He's like, well, now it's a script. And I started reading it. It was absolutely brilliant.
Wow.
And I thought, Kevin, my God, you got to develop this thing. He's like, all right. So he quickly developed the script into a feature, and we shot it. And so, therein lies how this stuff happens sometimes. A goofy idea becomes a script, becomes a production, becomes a movie that you see. And essentially, Stiffed is about a trio of low-rent bank robbers who die in a botched heist, and they are brought back to life by the leader of the trio's satanic stripper girlfriend and her coven of idiot goth kids. They get resurrected, so they're zombies, and they decide to continue their unlife or undeath of crime by going back to just being scumbag, robbers. So as she's manipulating them, and as they're starting to decay and parts are falling off, their relationship and their bromance starts to decay, and there's some intrigue and an obsessed police detective, and it's a very fun movie. And I gotta be honest, I myself still don't fully understand it, but I like it.
Right. Yeah.
I love the characters. I love the story. I love it. And when I made this movie, I wasn't sure how audiences were going to react to this, because it's very weird and very different. It's very pulpy, crime noir kind of weird movie. And audiences came to the screenings, and they loved it. And I thought, man, maybe we have something here. And that's been my worry all along, which is like, this is good and I like it, but I don't fully understand it, and I don't know what audiences are going to react to. And distributors liked it. I've had more offers on it than any movie I've had out in a while. And audiences that have screened it at screenings have loved it. And so I'm very, very excited for how people are going to receive it. And, of course, it was the next movie I directed after Necroville. And so, it's a huge step up. Technically from Necroville, it's the first movie I shot in HD. It's the first movie that we started being able to use a 35mm lens package on. It's a lot of different things that are technical steps forward from me as a director in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of not only the gear and what we were able to use, but also my own technique and my own kind of cobbling together of these different elements. So I'm on a lot of different levels. I'm really, really, really excited for and passionate about what's going to be the fate of Stiffed.
All right. Well, now, can I ask you, is there roughly an idea of when it'll be available? I mean, I know it's too early to say, but do you have a ballpark, roughly?
I can do that, because we're getting close to going with one of the deals that were on our table. I can tell you that it's usually from the time that we formally agree to go with a distributor, which I would say would be within the next month or two. Probably within the next month. Probably maybe within the next couple of weeks. But from the time we formally agree, it usually is about 6 months to a year.
Okay.
It's a years-long process, and it's funny. Like Stiffed is not yet released, but it's finished, and we're going to go with offers that we've had for release. And I've directed 2 other features and produced others since then, and it's like I've got stuff coming out this year that was shot 2 years ago, and then stuff that was shot last year that's not going to come out for another 2 or 3.
Right.
So it's funny. So when anybody sees Stiffed, for example, it'll be like sometime in 2012 by the time they see Stiffed. And for whatever critical reviews and analysis are of that movie, what's interesting to me is that's actually my technique from 2008. And like when Necroville comes out late 2007, and maybe it was 2008, but it was either 2008 or 2007. But the point is, when you watch Necroville and you're looking at that, that's my technique from 2005.
Right.
So it's really kind of this weird, out of sync,
gaps,
chronologically kind of thing where you're looking at a movie and it's like, well, that's what we were doing then, and you look at everything that was good and bad, and then you look at like 2 or 3 other movies since then that are still in post, and you look at what's good and bad about them. It's very weird.
Right. Yep. Well, that's on my watch list. But the next one we mentioned. Oh, I didn't mention it yet, but earlier conversations. Dozers in 2010. Now, I noticed there's somebody in this movie with you who I became friends with. I interviewed him, and I think he's a great guy. And you might remember him, David Z. Stamp. He played Toby.
Now here's the interesting thing about Dozers. Don Adams has been a friend for years. But my involvement in Dozers was really, really, really only. I came in on like the 3rd or 4th unit of shooting that movie. Now here's a hilarious story. I was originally supposed to be part of the principal photography of Dozers, and in fact, Don Adams used my camera to shoot Dozers. So Dozers was shot on the CL Productions camera. And Trent Haga and I were actually both supposed to be in Dozers, but because Chris Seaver had scheduled in advance for Ski Wolf, we had to, honor our commitments to Chris. We had to say to Don Adams, hey man, sorry, we're already committed to Chris. So hilariously, Trent Haga and I were both on the set of Ski Wolf, kind of laughing our asses off because we're on Swinging Mountain, and it's in the middle of the winter and it's like 6-foot snow.
Right.
That we're rolling around in all day making Ski Wolf, and we're freezing our asses off. So we're laughing because it's like we had to say no to Don's. I don't know if I'm supposed to disclose the budget, but a budget that was easily 10 times the size of Chris Seaver's Ski Wolf. Anyway, it was very funny. But then Don ran into a couple of production snags and needed to do second unit and stuff in Milwaukee. And how I got into that scene with Adam Minarovich, who wrote Chop, Trent Haga's Chop, and also appears as a character in the first 2 or 3 episodes of The Walking Dead. Adam Minarovich, by the way, very, very talented. But it was actually cheaper for Don Adams to fly me out to Milwaukee holding the camera than it was for Don Adams to pay for the camera to be shipped to Milwaukee.
Oh, wow.
So Don flew me out to Milwaukee and, put me in this scene. I think a distributor or a producer, I can't remember, wanted more gore, or something like more scenes with more stuff in it. So Adam and I end up playing a couple of characters that appear a couple of times in the movie, and then but because it was like 3rd or 4th unit for that movie, it was like so far removed from the main principal cast that like I never interacted with anybody except for the people in the scenes that I'm in. And he shot a couple of those scenes in Milwaukee, and he shot a couple of those scenes in Albuquerque. Or like Curly Plapayala, for example, he's in Dozers. And he and I, go back years, all the way back to the Six Flush, but he was in the LA unit of Dozers, and so we're in the same movie, but we never interacted in the same time-space continuum to make it. So it's very weird. Don's still got that in post. He's cranking it out. Again, it's like I talked earlier in this interview. These things can be a years-long process before you get them completely shot, before you get them completely posted, and then once you get them completely posted, getting them distributed. It's a years-long process. But the bits of Dozers that I've seen are amazing. I think Don really will have knocked it out of the park with this one when he gets to it. And can't say enough good things about Don, and I can't say enough good things about the cast that I worked with. The Milwaukee Film Corps is Don's kind of go-to Milwaukee guys. Those guys are consummate professional, outstanding team. Adam Norwich, everybody's a dream to work with on that movie.
Nice. Well, the next movie, Brain Cell in 2010, directed by Alex Burrell, and there's a couple cast members that I'm very familiar with. Of course, you, Joe Zazzo, which I got to chat with him. He's an interesting guy, and of course, the lovely Rainey Brown. What exactly is Brain Cell about? Do you want to tell the listeners?
Brain Cell is kind of an interesting piece. Alex Burrell, who was the captain of that ship, it was his first feature, and he really wanted to go for kind of a giallo kind of event. Brain Cell is the story of Rain's character. Can't quite remember the name of the character, but she's in England. Her father's died, and so she's interacting with her uncle, who's now a researcher in a English university. And it turns out that he's doing these evil experiments, warping people's minds and brainwashing them into becoming like kind of mindless, vicious animals.
Right.
So there's kind of like a zombie movie element in that he's turning people into zombies, quote unquote, but it's more like mindless, controlled, killing vicious people. It was a wild time. That was my first time overseas. Joe is an absolutely outstanding producer. To say nothing of his talents as an actor. Again, got to work with Rain. And the crew was totally nominal. It ended up being, for the most part, Alex Burrell and me. So I stepped up as the first AD, and then I'd say like 90% plus of the tech in that movie was just me and Alex slinging what lights and equipment were available to make that happen. But Alex is a great gent. Nice guy. He lives in Italy, or at least the last time I checked in with him, I checked in with Alex. He's living in Italy as a DP. A very talented, thoughtful young man. Outstanding guy. And I got to meet and hang out with Matt Berry. Just the whole experience was amazing.
Yeah, there's the next film that a lot of people are really peeking their nose and eyes up at it. Rot Gut. Now, we had this conversation a couple of days ago, and it's amazing. I've noticed that if a movie has a funky name like Rot Gut, the first thing people think of is, okay, Rot Gut, zombies. Maybe not. But like I told you, from doing this reviewing and interviews for the last 10, 11 months, I've noticed that a title has a lot to do with people's peak interest. Now, that might sound strange, but
no, I think you're onto something with that.
I think
you're definitely onto something with that.
So go ahead, Rot Gut. I'm really anxious to see it. I know there's not much on IMDb about it, obviously, but if you can speak a little bit, or if not at all, it's fine.
No. I'm more than happy to talk about it. Rot Gut is a very interesting project. We shot it last summer, and it's still in post. But it was kind of that current trifecta of Devin O'Leary, who we spoke of, who penned I Heart You and Stift, wrote the script for Rot Gut. Craig Butler, who was the director of The Righteous and the Wicked, and was the director of photography for Stift, was the producer. And I of course, was the director. And, I got to say, Rot Gut shows a lot of maturity in my estimation in terms of, it's the most recent thing I've directed, I think. I lose track. But I think it shows a lot of maturity in, it's about the fourth or fifth time we've broken out the 35mm lens package, working with the HVX, the Panasonic HVX. It's, finally getting our chops together with the porta jib that I used, that I bought all the way back in stiff to start, getting, more dynamic motion going on in the movies. And so, to me, it's like the best thing I've shot to date. And Devin and Craig are back in Albuquerque, and they're working on cobbling it together. Craig is editing, and under Devin's watchful eye and my occasional aggravating notes. And and of course, to bring it back together, earlier points in the conversation, Hank Carlson, Autumn Night Studios, and Vince Nardi. Vince came out; he was the director of photography, and Hank was the special effects artist. And it all just really, really came together really, really well. The gore is great, the lighting and the camera work is great. The whole thing is it's a nice ensemble cast. And an interesting thing has happened, which is Devin and Craig were excited. They put together a teaser trailer, and there's just been huge buzz around it. There's been like 12 online sites have been interested in wanting to cover it and to talk about it and to interview about it, but we've already gotten like 2 or 3 offers from distributors to look at screeners. I mean, I've never had anything kind of blow up this huge after it was done, much less before it was done. So, with any luck, this will be a very solid piece that'll break out a little bit. But I can say from my end, looking at the the maturity and technique that came from what's going on, just, having ground through so many of these features, I feel like I'm finally starting to figure out how this all works.
Right.
But some really slick stuff. I'm really proud of the work that we did there, and I'm really excited for how that's turning out. And it's it's like there's definitely, I mean, if you go back and you look at Necroville and you look at Stiff, and then I Heart You, which is still in post, that was shot between Stiff and Rock Cut. And there's, I mean, I'm excited for myself.
Right.
Because I'm seeing that things are getting more cohesive with the team and with my work as an individual, and the team that I work with and the people that I work with. Everything is just really moving in a really smooth, nice direction. So I'm very excited.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I mean, you came a long way. I mean, Necroville, to me, I loved it. But, I mean, if you can top that off, when I love something that's lesser expense of a baby, you can only imagine the stuff that you're going to do now, how good it's going to be.
Well, I mean, of course, that's my hope. It all sounds really great, but, at the end of the day, we might get a DVD out. It might end up being a total dog. So, let's not ring the bells just yet. But from what I've seen thus far, I mean, Stiff, I'm very excited about. And I Heart You is looking great. There's a full working rough cut of that now. So we're starting to trim that back and make it an acceptable length and acceptable, start to balance out the sound and the color. So it won't be very long before we're finally getting that out to screeners, for distributors to screen. And, Rocket's just kind of bumping along.
All right, well, the next one, I mean, we got 2 more to do, but the next one is Rags in 2011. You mentioned him earlier, Chris Ruffley. Yep.
Rags was a tough shoot. Chris talks about this a little bit online, so I'm gonna take a chance at thinking that this is okay to talk about. But Chris' father died in a motorcycle accident just a week before we started the shoot for Rags, and it was a really tough decision to try to move forward on that movie. But ultimately, it was Chris' decision to make. And the decision that Chris made was, his father got him into making movies. And, the last thing what he concluded is the last thing his father would want would be for the production to be disrupted by that. So, with a level of character and bravery that I really haven't seen from many people in many situations, and in the very greatest tradition of, theater and cinema of the show must go on.
Right.
Chris committed to production, and frankly, because I know what I know of these things, when you start the juggernaut rolling, when you call forth the dragon, and you make it all happen, when you lose that momentum for any reason, grand or small, it really is almost next to impossible to get that production back together. And so, there was a lot of question as to whether or not we were going to do it.
Right.
One of my jobs, Chris asked me as co-producer, one of the things he asked me to do is to keep everybody organized and keep everybody in touch. He didn't want to deal with 1,000 questions from the cast and crew. He wanted everybody to filter through me. So I was kind of like fielding all that for Chris and then bringing, relevant issues to Chris and asking him what he wanted to do while he was dealing with his father's funeral and his family. So, we really held it all together, but with such a heavy emotional content kind of looming in the background of it, it was a little bit heavy,
Right.
a little bit heavy. But again, Vince Nardi as Cameron DP, Hank Carlson effects, and they came out from North Carolina. I believe they drove down, and then right after that we shot Rock Gut in Albuquerque. So so I'm hooking up with Vince and Hank in North Carolina, then I'm hooking up with them again in Albuquerque. It's very cool. But like Rags, Vanelle's in it, and Rags is also interesting because it's gotten a lot of that same kind of heat that Rock Gut has, and so Chris has just kind of gotten teasers and trailers out, and Chris is starting to blow up a little bit. He's got a few a book that he wrote, and other books that he's got in development, and with Wickedwood and Rags in post, and Rags getting close to completion. It's very exciting times for Chris. So, I definitely have a lot of respect for Chris and a lot of personal feelings of loyalty and fealty for him for just stepping up and just sticking it out and making the movie happen no matter what.
Right.
It was a tough shoot emotionally, but we got through it, and no matter how Rags turns out, no matter what becomes of it, that is the movie that I think. Any given movie that a guy directs, defines him as a person, but like what he did and what he went through to get through that movie.
Right.
I don't have words to describe, that level of commitment. That is a dude who, Chris Ruffy is a dude who wants to make his movie, and Chris is a dude who's going to get that movie done, and no matter what, and that's what it takes. So a lot of love and a lot of respect for Chris on that, and of course, deepest condolences for his loss that he's still cooking with. It was barely a year ago.
I know how that is because my wife, I lost my mother-in-law a year and a half ago, and it's still around. It's something that will probably never go away, but and the encouragement, the strength that he had alone overpowers the movie, if you get what I mean by that.
Yeah.
His willpower and
And we all rallied around Chris, and if I was going to be frank, things got a little tense on the set, and things got a little tense interpersonally, but in the aftermath of all that, I think that's to be expected. Especially considering the strongly charged content of what was going on, not only with the script, which itself has some pretty intense content, but also the content of what was going on outside of all that. It's just it's a lot to bear, and so tempers flared, and there was a little bit of breakdowns, but in the end, everybody was there to make a movie, and everybody was friends. It was all nobody on the set was new,
right.
By and large. Sam Novak was there, and Vanell was there, and I was there, and even Israel Wright, who's a great technician and a cast member in a small part, goes all the way back with me to the Stink Flesh. He was like 8 or 9 zombies in the Stink Flesh. So it was a cast and crew that knew each other, loved each other, and supported each other, and we were able to bear some of those tough emotions that were a natural consequence of what's going on. We all got through it. So a lot of love and a lot of respect, not only for Chris but for everybody who kind of coped with that. As I'm playing this whole interview back in my head as we're doing it, like I'm really kind of sounding like a cheerleader for, go my team and go me and go stuff I've been in. But
No.
I've worked on a lot of amazing productions with a lot of amazing people, so
No.
I don't know what to say. I've had a great run.
But you know what? The whole purpose of an interview is to promote your work that you've done and the work that you made. So don't worry about it. I mean, hell.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a self-aggrandizing, jerkwad.
Well, that's a matter of opinion. But the next and last but not least, I Heart You in 2011. You directed it, written by your buddy Devin O'Leary. There's not much there's not much said about it, obviously, but if you can talk a little bit, that's fine. It's a comedy.
Absolutely. From the time Lane and I met each other, we kind of wanted to generate some kind of a project that would showcase, Lane and Billy. And we kind of came up with the concept for I Heart You, and we thought it was great. And so, we got Devin to write the script, and he really knocked it out of the park. Shot it in the summer of 2009. In fact, shot it right before we shot The Righteous and the Wicked Western. And and it's all the same suspects. Vince Nardi was the DP camera op. Hank Carlson was the special effects. Craig Butler actually had a diminished role. He was associate producer on that. Devin wrote it, plays a substantial character in it as well. And then, of course, I directed it, and then stars me and Rain. So, a very, very, very fun movie. Serial killers in love, for all intents and purposes. What you've got is 2 serial killers who are trying to kind of lay low and live a square life, and they've inadvertently found themselves in their subterfuge in a marriage to one another. And what you see is the marriage starts to break down because people aren't being themselves, and you have a little bit of that marital discord, which is very, very, very hilarious. And
right.
Then as the relationship starts to decay, both of them start to have extramarital affairs, quote unquote, in the form of going out and killing people. So then what happens is there's a media storm, and then each of the characters becomes obsessed with the secret person that the other one is in the news, and it becomes a little bit of a farce. And then in the end, they discover who each other are, they confront each other, and hijinks ensues. So that's a little bit of the arc of I Heart You, but the gore is top notch that Hank did. Love Devin's script. It was also interesting because it was very unique in that I'd never had a movie come together so quickly or so smoothly.
Right.
Rain really, really, really wanted to make that movie happen. And it was getting to a point where I had to tell Rain, we're getting past my point of no return, where if we don't do this movie, I do not have enough time to put it together, and I have other commitments for Western, so this is the time to move or push it back. And Rain has that same understanding that if you push it back, I think it's really hard to recapture that momentum.
Right.
So she found us the money, and in just inside 4 weeks, which is my shortest time for production, for pre-production ever, in just 4 weeks, we were able to cobble together 45 actors and something like 40 some odd locations and just knocked it all out of the park, and everything was smooth and seamless. And newcomer to the team, Melissa Roberge. She started out as first AD, and all of the tremendous work she did for the locations and stepping up to the plate, organizing and making everything happen. She kind of graduated to associate producer on that movie, and then she continued as first AD on Black Up. She's an outstanding organizer, and just an impossible work ethic, just relentless. Couldn't have made that movie without. I mean, I can't make the movie without the concerted efforts of everybody. But that short time frame and that short turnaround really have to put to actually Rain and Mel in Albuquerque organizing and making everything happen, and then Rain taking schedules and information and things and breaking down the script. Everybody really, put their nose to the grindstone and really cranked that one out. So that one was amazing because I've never had anything happen so smoothly or so quickly.
Right.
It's definitely a personal record for me. And it turned out funny and gory and great. I'm very excited for that. Very excited.
Well, I'm kind of anxious to see all these. There's a lot of post-productions, which, time to wait, time to, get excited, and I'll get a chance.
That's what they say, it's hurry up and wait.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's good and bad. You have to wait, sucks, but, when they all come out, boom, 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 at the same time, you got plenty of movies for reviewers to talk about, and who knows,
There you go. Sky's the limit.
You got it. Well, Billy, I do appreciate coming on. It's, by the way, happy Memorial Day, by the way.
Happy Memorial Day to you.
Thanks a lot for taking your time and getting us in, and I really appreciate it.
Gruesome, I appreciate your efforts. The truth of the matter is without an audience, the movies never really matter. That's something I've said for years, and I truly deeply believe it. If the audience never sees the movie, then it really never mattered. And for guys like you who love movies and who spend the time to review movies, to bring information and news and reviews to fans, you are definitely a cornerstone and a linchpin in that process. So, I thank you for the opportunity to sit here and yammer incessantly about me and my peeps, who I can't say good enough things about.
No problem. It's well entertaining, well informative, and again, no problem, and I appreciate you taking time for me today.